It was an ordinary spring afternoon in Philadelphia when three teenagers decided to pull what they thought would be a harmless prank, never imagining that Hollywood legend Sylvester Stallone would be watching from across the street. Let me know where you're watching from today as we dive into this incredible story that reminds us all about the importance of standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves. The sun cast long shadows across Lincoln High School as the final bell rang, signaling freedom for hundreds of students eager to escape the confines of education. Among them was Aaron Brooks, a 17-year-old junior with a gentle spirit and determined eyes that had seen more struggle than most his age. Aaron navigated the crowded hallways with practiced precision, maneuvering his wheelchair with the same dedication he applied to everything in his life. Born with spinal muscular atrophy, Aaron had never known a life without challenges. But those who knew him rarely thought about his disability. They were too busy admiring his quick wit, his talent for mathematics, and his unwavering optimism that seemed to light up even the darkest corners of the school. On this particular day, Aaron was headed to the local park to work on his photography project, a newfound passion that allowed him to capture the world from his unique perspective. What he didn't know was that Kevin Smith, Brad Sparks, and Tyler Jimenez, three seniors with a reputation for boundary-pushing pranks and a significant social media following, had set their sights on him as their next viral sensation. "This is going to get us at least 50,000 views," Kevin whispered as he adjusted his phone camera, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "People love this kind of stuff." Brad nodded, a smirk playing on his lips. "Just make sure you get his face. When it happens, that's where the money shot is." The three had spent their lunch period setting up an elaborate prank that involved a fake charity request, a trip to the park's fountain, and a remote-controlled device that would spray Aaron with water when triggered. In their minds, it was harmless fun, the kind of content that had earned them nearly 100,000 followers across various platforms. What they hadn't accounted for was the presence of Sylvester Stallone, who was in town scouting locations for his newest film. The actor had chosen to take a quiet afternoon walk through the same park, wanting to reconnect with the city that had inspired his most iconic character decades ago. Stallone sat on a bench near the fountain, baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, sunglasses concealing his famous face. At 60+ years old, he still carried himself with the quiet confidence that had made him a legend, though today he was simply a man enjoying the peacefulness of an ordinary neighborhood park, until he noticed the three teenagers following. The boy in the wheelchair with suspicious intent. Aaron wheeled himself toward the fountain, camera hanging around his neck, unaware of the audience he had attracted. He positioned himself at the perfect angle to capture the way the sunlight danced through the water droplets, creating miniature rainbows that disappeared as quickly as they formed. "Excuse me?" Kevin called out, approaching Aaron with practiced casualness. "Are you Aaron Brooks?" Aaron looked up, surprise evident on his face. The popular seniors had never spoken to him before. "Yeah, that's me. I'm Kevin. We've never really talked, but I've seen you around." Kevin's voice was friendly, his posture relaxed as he gestured to his friends who hung back slightly, Brad discreetly filming with his phone. "We're collecting donations for the Children's Hospital. Would you mind if I ask you a few questions for our fundraising video?" Aaron's face lit up. "Sure, that sounds great. My little cousin was treated there last year. They do amazing work." Kevin guided Aaron closer to the fountain, positioning him perfectly for their prank while asking meaningless questions about the hospital's importance. From his bench, Stallone watched the interaction with growing suspicion. He had been in the entertainment industry long enough to recognize when someone was performing rather than being genuine. "Perfect. Just a few more questions," Kevin said, glancing briefly at Tyler, who held the remote control in his pocket. "If you could just move a little closer to the fountain so we can get it in the background," as Aaron obliged, moving his wheelchair to the spot they designated. Stallone rose from his bench. Years of playing heroes hadn't just been acting. For him, there was something in his core that couldn't stand by when something felt wrong. "And now, for our special surprise," Kevin announced, his voice rising theatrically as Tyler pressed the button. But before the device could activate, a strong hand clasped Tyler's shoulder. "I think that's enough filming for today," came a gravelly, instantly recognizable voice. The three teenagers froze, slowly turning to find themselves face to face with Sylvester Stallone, his sunglasses now removed, his eyes sharp and assessing. "Mr. Stallone," Kevin gasped, his phone nearly slipping from his suddenly trembling fingers. Aaron looked from the actor to the three seniors, confusion evident on his face. "What's going on?" "That's what I'd like to know," Stallone said, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "Because from where I was sitting, it looked like these young men were setting you up for some kind of prank, not collecting for charity." Tyler's face drained of color as he quickly tried to hide the remote control, but Stallone had already seen it. With decades of experience performing and directing complex action sequences, very little escaped his notice. "Let me see that," Stallone said, extending his hand toward Tyler. Reluctantly, Tyler surrendered the device. Stallone examined it briefly before looking toward the fountain, quickly piecing together their scheme. So the plan was to soak him. "Get it all on video for your followers?" Stallone asked, his disappointment evident. "That's your idea of entertainment?" Kevin shifted uncomfortably. "It was just supposed to be a joke. Everyone would laugh, would they?" Stallone gestured toward Aaron. Would he laugh, being humiliated in public turned into content without his consent? The park had grown quiet, other visitors beginning to recognize the famous actor and stopping to watch the confrontation unfold. Among them was Matthew Gonzalez, Aaron's best friend since elementary school, who had been on his way to meet Aaron for their photography session. "What's happening?" Matthew asked, quickly moving to Aaron's side, his protective instinct kicking in instantly. "These guys were about to pull some kind of prank," Aaron said, the realization dawning on him as he spoke, "and Sylvester Stallone stopped them." Matthew's eyes widened as he took in the scene. His best friend, three of the school's most popular seniors looking thoroughly chastised, and the star of Rocky standing in the middle of their local park. "You know," Stallone said, addressing the three pranksters but speaking loudly enough for everyone gathered to hear, "I've played a lot of tough guys in my career, fought Apollo Creed, Clubber Lang, Ivan Drago, but you know what real strength is. It's not about how hard you can hit, it's about lifting others up when they're down." He turned to Aaron, his expression softening. "I noticed your camera. You're a photographer?" Aaron nodded, still somewhat stunned by the entire situation. "I'm trying to be. I'm working on a project about perspective, showing the world from different viewpoints. That's what art is all about," Stallone said with genuine interest. "Helping others see the world through different eyes." He turned back to the three teenagers. "Maybe that's something you boys could learn from Aaron here. Instead of using your platform to tear people down for a few laughs, you could be lifting them up, showing their strengths." Kevin looked at his shoes, the weight of Stallone's words sinking in. "We didn't think of it that way." "That's the problem," Stallone replied. "You didn't think about him as a person, just content." By now, a small crowd had gathered, many with phones out, recording the unexpected encounter. Among them was Maria Hernandez, a local news reporter who happened to be in the park on her day off. "Mr. Stallone," she called out, professional instincts overriding her day off, "would you mind telling us what's happening here?" Stallone glanced at Aaron, silently asking permission to share the story. When Aaron nodded, the actor gave a brief account of what he'd witnessed, careful to focus more on the importance of respect and less on villainizing the three teenagers who now looked thoroughly ashamed. "I believe in giving people a chance to make things right," Stallone concluded. "Everyone deserves the opportunity to change their story, to be better than they were yesterday." He turned to Kevin, Brad, and Tyler. "So what's it going to be, fellas? What kind of story do you want to tell with your platform?" The three exchanged glances, and it was Brad who spoke first. "We messed up, big time." He turned to Aaron. "I'm sorry, man. This was way out of line." Aaron studied them for a moment before responding. "You know what hurts the most? It's not that you picked me for a prank. It's that you never bothered to know me as a person first." His words hung in the air, simple but profound. Kevin stepped forward, deleting the video they'd been recording. "You're right, and we'd like to change that, if you'll give us the chance." The tension in the air began to dissipate, replaced by something more hopeful. Stallone watched the exchange with approval, seeing the seeds of change being planted in real time. "You know," he said, "I'm in town scouting locations for my new film. We're looking for local talent to feature in some background scenes." He looked at Aaron. "Including photographers to document the behind-the-scenes process. Might be something you'd be interested in." Aaron's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious," Stallone confirmed. "And maybe these three could help out too. Put their video skills to better use. What do you say?" The transformation on the faces of the three pranksters was immediate. Shock, disbelief, and then genuine gratitude. "We won't let you down, sir," Tyler promised. "Make sure you don't let him down," Stallone replied, nodding toward Aaron. "That's what matters." As the crowd began to disperse, Maria approached Aaron. "Would you be willing to share your photography with our viewers? Your perspective is exactly what our community feature needs." Before Aaron could respond, Sylvester placed a hand on his shoulder. "Only if you're comfortable with it. Remember, you're in control of your story now." Aaron nodded, a new confidence evident in his posture. "I'd like that. I want people to see what I see." As the afternoon sun began its descent, casting golden light across the park, something had shifted in the atmosphere. What had begun as an attempt to humiliate had transformed into an opportunity for growth, understanding, and connection. Stallone exchanged contact information with Aaron and Matthew, promising to have his production assistant reach out about the photography opportunity. As he prepared to leave, he addressed the three former pranksters one last time. True power isn't about followers or views or pranks that go viral. It's about the impact you have on the lives around you. Choose to be someone who builds others up. He gestured toward their phones. Those are powerful tools you've got there. Use them to create, not destroy. With those words, he departed as quietly as he had arrived, leaving behind a story that would spread through the community. Not of a prank gone wrong, but of an unexpected encounter that changed the trajectory of several young lives. And as Aaron looked through his camera viewfinder at the new friends surrounding him, he captured not just their images, but the beginning of something meaningful. Proof that sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones where someone chooses to stand up and make a difference. The news of Sylvester Stallone's intervention at Lincoln Park spread through Philadelphia with remarkable speed. By the following morning, Maria Hernandez's story had been picked up by national outlets, and clips of the encounter were trending across social media platforms. The narrative had captured something people desperately needed: a genuine moment of compassion from an unexpected source. Aaron Brooks awoke to find his phone overflowing with notifications. Friends, family, and strangers alike had reached out, moved by what had transpired. As he scrolled through the messages, one in particular caught his attention. An email from Melissa Williams, Stallone's production assistant, confirming his invitation to the set and requesting a portfolio of his photography work. "This can't be real," Aaron whispered to himself, reading the email for the third time to ensure he hadn't misunderstood. His mother, Linda Rodriguez, appeared in his doorway, her eyes reflecting a mixture of pride and protective concern. "Everything okay, honey? Your phone's been buzzing non-stop." Aaron looked up, a tentative smile forming. "Remember when I told you about meeting Sylvester Stallone yesterday? He was serious about the photography opportunity. His team just emailed me." Linda moved to sit on the edge of his bed, the mattress dipping slightly under her weight. A single mother who had raised Aaron with unwavering determination since his diagnosis at age 3, she had learned to balance encouraging his independence with her instinct to shield him from disappointment. "That's wonderful," she said, carefully, measuring her response. "But let's not get too carried away until we know more details." "Mom," Aaron said, his voice steady, "this is real, and I'm going to do it." Something in his tone made Linda pause. She recognized the quiet resolve that had gotten him through countless physical therapy sessions, through the stares and whispers of strangers, through every obstacle life had placed in his path. It was the same determination she'd seen in his eyes when he'd asked for his first camera 2 years ago. "Okay," she finally nodded. "We'll figure it out together." Across town, Kevin Smith sat at his kitchen table, pushing cereal around his bowl, while his father, Donald Brooks, read the morning paper. The front page featured a photograph of Stallone with Aaron, alongside a smaller image of Kevin and his friends, looking appropriately shamefaced. "So," Donald said, folding the paper to better display the headline, "Rocky Star steps in to prevent teen bullying incident." "Want to tell me what happened?" Kevin winced. "You already know. It's all there in black and white." "I want to hear it from you," his father insisted, his voice firm but not unkind. Donald had raised Kevin alone since his wife's death 5 years prior, doing his best to guide his son through the turbulent waters of adolescence. Kevin set down his spoon, appetite gone. "We were going to prank this kid in a wheelchair for our channel. Stallone caught us before we could do it. End of story." "Not the end," Donald corrected. "What happens next is equally important." Kevin looked up, meeting his father's gaze. "Stallone invited us to help with his movie, said we could put our video skills to better use. And will you?" The question hung in the air between them. Kevin thought about the followers they'd gained overnight, not because of a successful prank, but because people were discussing their failed attempt and subsequent redemption opportunity. Their latest video, a sincere apology posted late last night, had already garnered more views than anything they'd created before. "Yeah," Kevin finally responded. "I think we will." At Lincoln High School, the atmosphere had noticeably shifted. Aaron, who had previously navigated the hallways in relative anonymity, now found himself the center of attention. Students who had never spoken to him before stopped to chat, ask about Stallone, or express admiration for how he'd handled the situation. "This is weird," Aaron confided to Matthew Gonzalez as they made their way to first period. "Yesterday, half these people didn't know I existed." Matthew adjusted his backpack strap, watching a group of freshmen whispering and pointing in their direction. "Fame is a strange thing, my friend. Enjoy it while it lasts." "I don't want fame," Aaron replied, stopping to let a rushing student pass. "I just want my photography to mean something." "Well, now you might get both," Matthew pointed out. Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of Alejandra Santiago, editor of the school newspaper and one of the most respected students in their grade. "Aaron," she called, slightly breathless from hurrying to catch him, "I've been looking everywhere for you. Would you consider doing an interview for the paper? Your story could really inspire other students." Before Aaron could respond, he noticed Kevin, Brad, and Tyler entering the main hallway. The three stopped short upon seeing him, an awkward silence falling between the groups. It was Brad who moved first, approaching with uncharacteristic humility. "Hey, Aaron," he said, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. We just wanted to check if you're still okay with us being involved in the Stallone thing. We'd understand. If you'd rather we stayed away. Aaron studied them thoughtfully. The three seniors had tormented countless students over the years with their pranks, building a reputation and following that made them untouchable in the social hierarchy of high school. Yet here they stood, genuinely uncomfortable, awaiting his verdict. I think, Aaron said slowly, that Stallone was right. Everyone deserves a chance to change their story. Relief washed over their faces, and in that moment something fundamental shifted in the dynamics between them. They weren't friends, not yet, but they had found common ground in the opportunity before them. The rest of the school day passed in a blur of excited conversations and planning. By final period, Aaron had agreed to Alejandra's interview, coordinated schedules with Kevin's team for their first visit to the film set that weekend, and received confirmation that his photography portfolio had been approved by Stallone's team. The final bell rang. Aaron found himself surrounded by a small group of students who had never paid him much attention before. Among them was Karina Hill, whose quiet kindness had always stood in stark contrast to her popularity. "I've always wanted to ask about your photography," she admitted, falling into step beside his wheelchair as they headed toward the exit. "But I never knew how to start the conversation." "You could have just said hello," Aaron replied with a smile. Karina's cheeks flushed slightly. "I know, I should have." The simple acknowledgement of missed opportunity hung between them, representative of the countless connections never made because of arbitrary social boundaries. "Well," Aaron said, "you're saying hello now." Outside, Linda waited in their accessible van, watching with quiet amazement as her son emerged from school surrounded by peers, engaged in animated conversation. In all his years at Lincoln High, she had never witnessed such a scene. When Aaron finally made his way to the van, his eyes were bright with excitement. "Mom, is it okay if we give Karina a ride home? She lives on our route, and we're talking about ideas for a photo series." Linda glanced at the pretty, dark-haired girl standing a respectful distance away. "Of course, honey." As they drove through the streets of Philadelphia, Linda listened to Aaron and Karina discussing lighting techniques and composition, their shared enthusiasm bridging any awkwardness. She couldn't help but marvel at how quickly life could change, how a chance encounter with Sylvester Stallone had somehow catalyzed a transformation in her son's social world. That evening, as Aaron prepared his equipment for the weekend, his phone rang with an unknown number. Hesitantly, he answered. "Hello, Aaron Brooks speaking. Aaron, it's Sylvester Stallone." The unmistakable voice sent a jolt of excitement through him. "I wanted to personally confirm everything for Saturday. My team tells me your portfolio is impressive." "Thank you, sir," Aaron managed, fighting to keep his voice steady. "That means a lot coming from you." "No need for sir," Stallone chuckled. "And I meant what I said. You've got a unique perspective, both literally and figuratively. That's valuable in this industry." They spoke for several minutes about logistics, with Stallone explaining that he wanted Aaron to document the behind-the-scenes process from his viewpoint, capturing moments other photographers might miss. "One more thing," Stallone added before ending the call. "I understand the boys who were planning to prank you will be coming too?" "Yes," Aaron confirmed. "I think they deserve the chance." A moment of silence followed before Stallone responded. "That kind of forgiveness says more about your character than anything else could. See you Saturday, Aaron." As the call ended, Aaron sat in the quiet of his room, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. His life had been irrevocably changed by a series of events that might never have happened if three teenagers hadn't selected him as their target. Outside his window, the Philadelphia skyline glittered against the darkening sky, the same city that had given rise to Rocky Balboa, a character defined not by his victories, but by his resilience. Aaron understood now why Stallone had intervened. It wasn't just about stopping a prank, it was about recognizing a kindred spirit in the fight, to be seen for more than limitations. With renewed purpose, Aaron returned to preparing his equipment, determined to make the most of the opportunity before him, not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever been underestimated. Saturday morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through Aaron's bedroom window, nature itself seeming to acknowledge the significance of the day ahead. He had been awake for hours, meticulously checking his camera equipment, reviewing his portfolio one last time, and selecting clothes that struck the right balance between professional and authentic. "You've gone through your checklist 3 times, Linda observed from the doorway, coffee mug in hand. "Everything's ready, honey." Aaron nodded, running his fingers along the smooth surface of his camera. "I know. I just want to be prepared." "You are," she assured him, moving to help adjust his collar. More than prepared, the doorbell rang precisely at 8, signaling the arrival of their transportation. Stallone had arranged for a fully accessible van to collect Aaron and the others, ensuring the day would proceed without logistical complications. Outside, Aaron found Kevin, Brad, and Tyler already loaded into the vehicle, their usual confident demeanor replaced by nervous energy. Alongside them sat Matthew, who had been invited as Aaron's assistant, and Karina, whose artistic eye had impressed Stallone's team when they reviewed the collaborative project proposal she and Aaron had submitted. "Morning," Aaron greeted as the driver secured his wheelchair. "Everyone ready for this?" 5 anxious faces stared back at him, the magnitude of the opportunity suddenly very real. It was Kevin who finally broke the silence. "Thanks for not cutting. Who's out of this?" he said, his voice uncharacteristically sincere. "After what we almost did?" Aaron shook his head. "Today isn't about yesterday. It's about what we create together now." The simple statement seemed to release some of the tension in the vehicle, allowing conversation to flow more naturally as they made their way to the film set, an old steel factory on the outskirts of the city that had been transformed for Stallone's latest project. Upon arrival, they were greeted by Melissa Williams, whose efficiency and warmth immediately put everyone at ease. "Mr. Stallone is in the middle of a scene right now, but he asked me to get you all set up and oriented. You'll meet with him during the first break." The factory interior had been reimagined as a gritty urban landscape, with set designers creating the illusion of a city block within the cavernous space. Crew members moved with practiced precision, adjusting lights, checking equipment, and conferring in hushed tones. "This is incredible," Matthew whispered, eyes wide as he took in the controlled chaos around them. Melissa led them to a designated area where they could observe without disrupting the filming process. "Aaron, Mr. Stallone suggested you might want to start capturing some behind-the-scenes moments right away. The rest of you will be shadowing different departments based on your interests." With that, the group dispersed, Kevin and Tyler following the main camera operators, Brad joining the sound department, Matthew remaining with Aaron as his assistant, and Karina connecting with the set designers whose artistic vision had transformed the factory. Left to his own devices, Aaron began documenting the environment from his unique vantage point. Where traditional set photographers captured scenes from standing height, Aaron's perspective offered something different, shooting upward at actors and crew, finding moments of concentration, creativity, and connection that might otherwise go unnoticed. An hour into filming, Stallone emerged from the center of activity, making his way directly to Aaron with purposeful strides. Despite being in full costume for his character, a former Special Forces operative seeking redemption, the actor's warm smile was entirely his own. "Aaron," he greeted, extending his hand, "good to see you putting that camera to work already." I couldn't wait, Aaron admitted, shaking Stallone's hand. There's so much happening everywhere you look. That's the magic of filmmaking, Stallone agreed, crouching down to Aaron's eye level, a small gesture of respect that didn't go unnoticed. It's organized chaos creating something larger than any individual component. He glanced at Aaron's camera. Mind if I see what you've captured? So far? Aaron hesitated only briefly before handing over his camera. Watching Stallone scroll through his images was both terrifying and exhilarating, a living legend evaluating his work in real time. These are good, Stallone nodded, pausing on a particular shot of a lighting technician silhouetted against a backdrop, face turned upward in perfect concentration. Really good. You've got an eye for the moments between the moments. The simple praise sent a wave of confidence through Aaron. That's what interests me most. What happens when people think, no one's watching? Stallone handed the camera back, a thoughtful expression on his face. You know, that's what caught my attention that day in the park. I was watching when those boys thought no one was paying attention. It reveals character, who we really are, when we think there's no audience. The observation hung between them, profound in its simplicity. I've got to get back, Stallone said, rising to his feet. But I want you to keep shooting exactly what you see. Don't try to capture what you think we want. Capture what speaks to you. That's where the truth is. As Stallone returned to set, Aaron found himself approached by Richard Anderson, the film's director of photography, who had been observing their interaction with interest. The man doesn't give praise lightly, Richard commented, nodding towards Stallone's retreating figure. Mind if I take a look at what impressed him? For the next several minutes, Aaron found himself in an impromptu masterclass as Richard reviewed his work, offering technical suggestions while affirming his instinctual approach to composition. You're doing something interesting here, Richard observed. You're not just documenting, you're interpreting. There's a perspective, a point of view. Isn't that what photography should be? Aaron asked. Richard smiled. Absolutely, but it's rare to see it so clearly in someone so young. The morning progressed into afternoon, with each member of their unlikely group finding their place within the organized chaos of the production. Kevin and Tyler, initially starstruck by the professional camera operators, quickly proved their technical aptitude, earning grudging respect from the seasoned crew members. Brad's attentive nature made him a natural fit with the sound department, while Karina's artistic contributions had already caught the attention of the production designer. During the lunch break, the group reconvened to share their experiences. The earlier tension between them dissolved by their shared excitement and the common language of creativity they were discovering. They let me adjust one of the secondary lights for the background extras, Tyler reported, his usual bravado replaced by genuine enthusiasm. Said I had good instincts for balance. The sound mixer showed me how they isolate dialogue from ambient noise, Brad added. It's way more complex than anything we've ever done for our videos. As they exchanged stories, Aaron noticed Sylvester Stallone observing their table from across the commissary, a satisfied expression on his face. When their eyes met, the actor raised his water bottle in a subtle toast before being drawn into conversation with other crew members. The afternoon brought new challenges as Aaron was invited to photograph a key emotional scene between Stallone's character and a young actress playing his estranged daughter. The intimate nature of the performance required absolute silence and minimal disruption, placing additional pressure on Aaron to capture the moment without interfering with the actor's concentration. Just breathe and trust your instincts, Matthew whispered as they positioned themselves at the edge of the set. Aaron nodded, focusing his camera as the scene began. What unfolded before him was a masterclass in vulnerability, with Stallone's character breaking down barriers built over decades of emotional distance. The raw authenticity of the performance drew everyone present into its gravity, the entire crew holding their breath as the scene reached its emotional climax. When the director finally called "cut," there was a moment of reverent silence before the set erupted in spontaneous applause. Aaron realized he had tears in his eyes, moved not just by the performance, but by the privilege of witnessing such genuine human connection. As the crew reset for another take, Jenna Thomas, the young actress playing Stallone's daughter, approached. Aaron with curious eyes. "You're the photographer Mr. Stallone told me about," she said, her voice still carrying traces of the emotion from the scene. "He said you see things differently than most people." Aaron wasn't sure how to respond to such a statement. "I just try to capture what feels true," Jenna smiled. "That's exactly what he said you'd say." She glanced back at the set. "Would you mind showing me some of your photos when we wrap? I'd love to see how you interpreted the scene." The request, so genuine and devoid of condescension, touched Aaron deeply. "I'd be honored." As the day progressed, Aaron found himself increasingly integrated into the production process, his presence no longer a novelty, but a valued contribution. Crew members began asking him to photograph specific aspects of their work, recognizing that his unique vantage point offered a fresh perspective on their craftsmanship. By late afternoon, exhaustion began to set in for everyone. The physical and emotional demands of film production were taking their toll, particularly on Aaron, whose body required careful management of energy reserves. Matthew noticed first, quietly suggesting they take a short break in a quieter corner of the set. "You've been going non-stop for hours," he pointed out, handing Aaron a water bottle. "Even Stallone takes breaks." Aaron reluctantly acknowledged his fatigue. "There's just so much I want to capture." "And you will," Matthew assured him. "But pushing yourself to collapse won't help anyone." Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of Kevin, whose expression carried an unusual solemnity. "Hey," he said, taking a seat nearby, "I wanted to check if you're doing okay. You've been working harder than anyone today." The concern, coming from someone who just days ago had viewed him only as content fodder, struck Aaron as both strange and touching. "I'm fine," he started automatically, then reconsidered. "Actually, I am getting pretty tired, but I don't want to miss anything." Kevin nodded thoughtfully. "You know, when we first started our channel, we'd film for like 12 hours straight. Ended up with shaky footage and missed the best moments because we were too exhausted to react quickly." He hesitated before adding, "Sometimes taking a step back lets you see more clearly." The wisdom of this observation, especially coming from Kevin, wasn't lost on Aaron. "When did you get so philosophical?" Kevin laughed, some of his usual confidence returning. "Don't tell anyone. I've got a reputation to maintain." Their moment of connection was interrupted by Melissa, who approached with purpose. "Aaron, Mr. Stallone would like to speak with you. He's in his trailer whenever you're ready." Heart suddenly racing, Aaron exchanged glances with Matthew. "Did she say why?" Melissa shook her head. "He just asked me to find you." Making his way across the set to Stallone's trailer, Aaron couldn't help but wonder what prompted this private meeting. Had he disappointed somehow? Overstepped boundaries? The questions multiplied with each turn of his wheels. When he reached the trailer, the door opened before he could announce himself, revealing Stallone in casual clothes, his character's costume exchanged for a simple t-shirt and track pants. "Aaron," he greeted warmly, immediately dispelling any concerns. "Come in, there's something I want to discuss with you." Inside Stallone's trailer, Aaron was struck by the understated simplicity of the space. Despite the actor's legendary status, there were no ostentatious displays of wealth or achievement, just a functional working environment with a few personal touches. Family photos occupied one small shelf, alongside dog-eared scripts and well-worn books on filmmaking and philosophy. "Make yourself comfortable," Stallone said, clearing a stack of papers from a small table to create space. "Water? Coffee?" Water would be great, Aaron replied, maneuvering his wheelchair into position. The thoughtful design of the trailer allowed him to access the space with dignity, something he noted with appreciation. As Stallone handed him a bottle of water, Aaron couldn't help but voice the question foremost in his mind. Am I doing something wrong out there? Stallone's eyebrows raised in surprise. Wrong? Quite the opposite. That's why I wanted to speak with you privately. He sat across from Aaron, leaning forward with elbows on his knees, a posture of genuine engagement rather than authority. Richard, Henderson showed me more of your work during the last break. Your perspective isn't just different because of your physical position. There's an emotional intelligence in how you frame your subjects. Stallone paused, seeming to carefully consider his next words. The studio has been documenting this production for a potential behind-the-scenes feature. After seeing your photographs, I'd like to propose something different. Aaron's heart raced as Stallone continued. I want to feature your work as the primary visual narrative for the documentary, not just as supplementary content, but as the central perspective through which viewers experience the making of this film. The proposition hung in the air between them, its significance gradually sinking in. This wasn't charity or a token gesture. It was a professional opportunity based on the merit of his work. Why me? Aaron finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. You have access to any photographer in the industry, Stallone smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. Because sometimes the most valuable perspective comes from someone who hasn't been shaped by industry expectations. Your photography tells truth, Aaron, about the process, about the people, about what happens in the spaces between performance. He reached for a folder on the nearby counter, opening it to reveal printed copies of Aaron's photographs from earlier that day. Look at this one, he said, pointing to an image of Jenna Thomas in a moment of preparation before the emotional scene. Most set photographers would have focused on her rehearsing lines or discussing the scene with me or the director. You captured her standing alone, gathering her emotional resources. That's the real story of acting, not just what happens on camera, but the personal journey that precedes it. Aaron studied the photograph, seeing it through Stallone's perspective. He had instinctively captured Jenna in a moment of vulnerability and strength, her face partially shadowed as she transformed herself into the character. If you're interested, Stallone continued, I'd like you to continue documenting the production for the next 2 weeks. We can work around your school schedule, arrange transportation, whatever accommodations you need. The studio would compensate. You professionally, of course. The offer was beyond anything Aaron had imagined when he arrived that morning. What about the others? He asked, thinking of Matthew, Karina, and even Kevin's team. They've all made positive impressions today, Stallone acknowledged. If they're interested in continuing, we can find roles for them as well. But this particular opportunity is about your unique vision. Aaron nodded slowly, processing the magnitude of what was being offered. I'd need to discuss it with my mom. But yes, I'm definitely interested. Excellent, Stallone smiled, extending his hand to seal the agreement. I look forward to seeing how you capture the rest of this journey. As they shook hands, Aaron felt a shift in how he perceived himself. Not as a recipient of opportunity, but as a creator of it. The distinction was subtle but profound. When he emerged from the trailer, Aaron found the others waiting anxiously, curiosity evident in their expressions. Everything okay? Matthew asked immediately. Aaron couldn't contain his smile. Better than okay. Stallone wants to feature my photography as the main visual component of the behind-the-scenes documentary. And he said, if you're all interested in continuing to work on the production, there are roles for everyone. The news was met with excited exclamations and questions, the group gathering closer to hear details. Even Kevin, Brad, and Tyler, who had begun the week seeing Aaron as merely a target for their prank, now looked at him with genuine respect. "That's incredible," Karina said, her eyes bright with shared joy. "Your work deserves to be seen." As they celebrated this unexpected development, Aaron noticed Maria Hernandez approaching with a camera crew in tow. "Aaron Brooks," she called. "I was hoping for a follow-up interview about your experience today. Would you and your friends be willing to share your story?" The group exchanged glances, silently conferring. It was Tyler who spoke first. "Only if the story acknowledges how it started," he said firmly. "We need to own that part too." Maria nodded, recognizing the integrity behind the request. "Absolutely. The complete story is what makes this meaningful." As they prepared for the interview, Aaron felt Karina's hand briefly touch his shoulder, a small gesture of support that carried unexpected warmth. Their eyes met momentarily, a wordless connection forming between them. The interview unfolded organically, with each person sharing their perspective on the events of the past few days. Kevin, Brad, and Tyler spoke candidly about their initial intentions and how the intervention of Stallone had forced them to reconsider their approach to content creation. "We've built our channel on getting reactions," Kevin explained to the camera, "but we never stopped to think about the impact beyond those few seconds of footage. Meeting Sylvester Stallone and working alongside Aaron has shown us there's a better way to create content that actually means something." When it was Aaron's turn to speak, he chose his words carefully. "A week ago, I was just a kid with a camera and a dream that seemed pretty distant. Today, I'm a professional photographer with a unique perspective that's valued precisely because of the differences I bring to the table." He glanced around at the unlikely group that had formed around him. Sometimes the worst intentions can lead to the best opportunities when people are willing to grow. As the interview concluded, Sylvester Stallone joined them, his presence immediately elevating the energy of the gathering. The actor spoke briefly about the importance of mentorship and creating pathways for young talent regardless of physical limitations or past mistakes. "In my most famous role, Rocky wasn't defined by how many times he got knocked down," Stallone told the camera. "He was defined by how many times he got back up. That's the story I see in Aaron and in these young people who were brave enough to transform a mistake into something meaningful." The day concluded with a group photograph, Stallone in the center, surrounded by Aaron, Matthew, Karina, Kevin, Brad, and Tyler. It was a visual representation of the unexpected community that had formed from the most unlikely beginnings. As they prepared to leave the set, exhausted but exhilarated by all they had experienced, Stallone pulled Aaron aside for one final word. "You know," he said quietly, "in my career, I've played characters who fight external battles, opponents in the ring, enemies with weapons, impossible odds. But the most important fights are always internal. They're about overcoming limitations others place on you, and sometimes the ones you place on yourself." Aaron nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind Stallone's words. "What happened in that park could have gone very differently," the actor continued, "but because of how you responded, with dignity and forgiveness rather than anger, something transformative happened instead. Remember that power. It's greater than any limitation." With those words resonating in his mind, Aaron joined the others in the van for the journey home. As they drove through the streets of Philadelphia, the conversation flowed easily between people who, just days ago, had occupied entirely separate social worlds. "We should document this," Kevin suggested suddenly. "Not as a prank or for views, but as the real story of what happened. How meeting Stallone changed everything. A documentary about a documentary." Matthew laughed. "Why not?" Karina joined in. "It's about transformation, both in front of and behind the camera." Aaron listened to their enthusiasm, watching the city lights blur past the window. There was something powerful in how quickly human connections could form when artificial barriers were removed, how adversaries could become allies, strangers could become friends, and limitations could become strengths when viewed from a different perspective. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "How was it?" Aaron smiled, trying to imagine how he could possibly condense everything that had transpired into a simple response. Finally, he typed, "Life-changing. Will tell you everything when I get home. P.S. We need to talk about my new job." As the van continued through the night, Aaron looked at the unlikely group surrounding him, former bullies, new friends, and unexpected allies, all brought together by a chance encounter with Sylvester Stallone. He lifted his camera one last time, capturing them in their unguarded moment of camaraderie and possibility. In that frame, frozen in time, was the story he had always wanted to tell, one about seeing beyond appearances, about the capacity for change, and about finding strength in the very things that made you different. It was a story worthy of Stallone himself, about underdogs and second chances, about rising above circumstances and defying expectations. But most importantly, it was a story about the remarkable things that can happen when someone chooses to stand up for what's right, even when they think no one is watching. Because sometimes, as Aaron had learned, someone is watching. And sometimes, that someone changes everything.